Plymouth traffic, 7990 on final, runway 33 Plymouth.
Hello YouTube, it's Eric from Eric Flight here. I'm going to do a video on how to plan a VFR flight plan. The weather's really bad out here in New England right now. I was going to try to do my flight from Plymouth to Block Island, and I just decided, seeing that a lot of people have been asking, to make a video on how I plan VFR flight plans, especially if you're going a long distance over 50 nautical miles to make it cross country. You definitely want a flight plan to follow and also to file eventually. So what we're going to do is we're going to do all the flight planning here. I'm going to do it old school. We're going to be using various things along with our sectional. We're not going to use electronic means until we really have to here. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a plotter of some sort. I like the Jepson plotter, especially with the rotating wheel right here. You're also going to need an E6B flight computer. Here's the traditional one with the slide ruler type design, and on the back we're going to use that too as well. But this is a really nice one. I'm not getting paid for saying this, but the ASA aluminum one will last forever, even if it does get bent a little bit like it did there. So it's been in my flight bag, but it's good to have one in case you need a backup for the electronic version. And the electronic version I use is the Sporty's E6B. I use this a lot. This is the one that I go to the most, only because I find it to be a little quicker. So I'm going to cover both in the video, but we're going to start with the traditional E6B and not the electronic one. But we will use this to show you what it's like with the electronic one. You'll also need a chart supplement. We have the Northeast edition. It's a little out of date because I'm now using an electronic flight bag, but again, I'm showing you traditional. So this will give you all your frequencies and airport information, including diagrams in the back, should it be needed. So you definitely want a chart supplement book, and also the main sectional. And again, we're going totally traditional, so we have a paper sectional. Even though I'm transitioning to an electronic flight bag, I still have paper copies of at least the sectional. I also write out my flight log, which is flight planning, so that way I have it to follow. It's not just all in the electronic flight bag. It's nice to have backups because you never know. The battery could die in your tablet. Batteries can die in your E6B here. So again, I'm going to show you the traditional one. So a smart pilot always flies with the actual charts in paper format. So that way, it's nice to use electronic flight bag, but you have backups so that you can actually know and can do what you need to do without technology. And that's personally how I think someone should learn when they're doing private pilot, is don't use the technology, use the traditional ways, so that way you definitely know what you're doing. So this is a typical flight log. They come in many different ways. It depends on what your flight school gives you, honestly, because they train you first in ground school on this, and your instructor would too. This is one I've made based on the flight log that I was given. I made my own out of a spreadsheet, and I'll actually leave this in a link in the description below. I'll leave a nice flight log that I use that I'm referring to right now, and it has everything you need on it. There's some things that people say is missing. Honestly, I got through all my cross countries just fine with this, and I'm trying to be as simple as possible when describing these, because when I was looking for how to fill out a flight log, to flight plan everything, I found it very confusing on those videos on YouTube at first. So this is going to be straight and basic. We're also going to estimate certain things, but I'll tell you where to get that information. And without further ado, let's start filling out the flight log. So we're going to plan a flight from Kilo Papa Yankee Mike, and I'm going to put that in the from box right here. Notice that I'm using a pencil, which is always good because things can change on winds when you get to the airport versus when you did it earlier, say like the night before, which is what I would be doing if I was flying tomorrow to Block Island. And so always use a pencil. So we're going to go from Kilo Papa Yankee Mike to Kilo Bravo India Delta. So you want to put where you're going from and to, and we'll talk about all this stuff in a second. Let's go to cruise, true airspeed. Where you would find this is you'd have the POH. I'm going to use my tablet for that, but you want to get the POH out of your plane. I found a PDF version of the POH for the 152 that I fly, and I made sure it was just like the other one. So you load up the POH, and once you load up the POH, you're going to scroll down to least for the Cessna 152. You're going to scroll down to section 5, performance, and it gives you all these charts on the performance of your aircraft right here. This can get really, really heavy when you get into it. The biggest thing that we're going to look at for true airspeed is our cruise performance right here. Again, that's in section 5 of the Cessna 152 POH, which is the Pilot's Operating Handbook, if you're wondering. Some companies call it different things, but we call it the Pilot's Operating Handbook, and it's often shortened to POH. So you're going to pick the pressure altitude that you're going to do. You're going to decide on the RPMs. Usually I'm anywhere between 2,300 and 2,400. And then you also have to figure for temperature. Again, this is really, really intricate for a flight sim pilot. For a real pilot, or if you're going for your check ride, you definitely want to know how to use this. And again, you'll be taught how to use this. I'm not going to go so much into this video on how to use it. But if I fly typically, on average, about 4,000 feet, you'll see that the speeds go anywhere from 81, 80, 78, all the way up to about 102, okay? So I'll be honest with you. We can kind of estimate this. Will it be a little bit off? Sure, but what you have to understand is this is under temperatures, so you're going to have to interpolate this stuff anyways. So honestly, for the 152 at least, I just average out to 100 knots on that true airspeed. If you want to be totally accurate, please learn how to use the cruise performance. But for our example, we're always going to have true airspeed of 100 knots. And that's kind of in the middle between 2,300 and 2,400 RPMs, between 95 and 101. So 100 knots is a nice even number, and it'll get us right around where we have to be in the flight planning. Altitude. If I was going to Block Island, I'm going over water, and I'll show you that in a second. So what you want to do on altitude is you definitely want to know on the sectional, which is our main map for flying, where you're flying to. You can see that this thing is huge. I'm just going to fold it down to what I need, because you're going to have to fold this down when you're in the cockpit anyways. So the first thing you want to do for doing this the long way is we're going to take a plotter, and you can see I already made a line, but you have to just basically plot from your airport to your next airport, because I'm ultimately going to be at Block Island. If you're going to do multiple legs, which means multiple places or checkpoints, you do a line to each one. But I'm going to do a straight shot from Plymouth to Block Island. And you're just going to trace that line so that way you have a reference line from your airport to the other airport. All right? Now we're going to need that because the plotter is going to help us plan this. And a flight from Plymouth, Kilo Papa Yankee Mike, to Block Island, Kilo Bravo India Delta. It's a straight shot right over here. And we're going to go over Rhode Island Sound because Block Island is an island. So, seeing that we're going over water, a safe thing to do is to add some altitude there, because let's say we have a problem right over Rhode Island Sound. We want enough minutes to reach some type of land and have some type of plan to get to a place to land if we're not going to make Block Island. So, the minimum I would do, just in my opinion, is first off, I'm heading west. West means that we have to be at an even altitude if we're flying above 3,000 feet. 3,000 feet and above, you have to pick an altitude that's even plus 500 feet because we're VFR. That's just the rules. So I'm going to go at 4,500 feet at least. If it's a really good day and there's not clouds, it's clear out, I might go 6,500. That will give me more safety as I go over Rhode Island Sound. And I will have more altitude equals greater distance to glide should the engine quit or whatever, and you can get someplace to land. And you can see that you have Newport State right here. Richmond, you're probably not going to see. That's like a small field airport. But you're at least going to hit land of some sort to have a chance to land. Or if your engine quits out here, maybe you can make it to Block Island. It depends. So, but we're gonna do 4,500 for this flight log. Again, you pick altitude based on safety and what is allowed by the rules. If you're going west, it means that you need an even altitude plus 500 above 3,000 feet. And if you're going east, which is a magnetic heading, by the way, magnetic heading of east, anywhere from 0 degrees to 179, you're going to do an odd altitude plus 500, anything 3,000 and above. So what about altitudes 3,000 feet and below? Well, typically you can fly wherever you want to altitude-wise as long as it's safe enough to do so. You want to be at least 500 feet above sparsely populated places, and you want to be at least 1,000 feet above ground level, by the way, on heavily populated areas. So the first tool we're going to use, again, is the plotter. And we're going to line it up right on that route that we already traced. And we're going to take our flight log, and we're going to find out the number of miles, nautical miles, from Plymouth to Block Island. And we're going to make sure we use the sectional side. It says sectional right there, so we know that this is measured for sectional, standard sectionals. And it's right about here. So that's 55, 56, 57, 58 and a half. So we'll say 59. 59 miles. We'll round up to 59. And we're going to put that under total miles on the flight log. So it's 59 miles to Block Island when you're traveling from Plymouth. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to line it again up on the line that we made, which is why you want the line first. Make sure it's nice and straight. And then there are these black lines right here. These are isogonic lines. I hope I pronounced that right. Isogonic lines, and they're lined up with true north. So they help you with magnetic deviation here. And then what's helpful with this Jefferson plotter here is you rotate this wheel, and it has all these arrows pointing up. They're supposed to be pointing to north, and you line them up with that isogonic line. Anywhere you can find it, you line it up. Right here's one. We're going to line up parallel to that so that the arrows point to north. Then, seeing that we're heading southwest, this will show us what our true course is right here. And it looks like it's about 221. So on true course, we're going to put 221. That is the course without any magnetic variation or wind correction planned on that. So that's how you use a plotter. That's what it's used for. It's used to measure distances and also to find out what your true course is. Again, the wheel has all these headings on it, and you just go where that arrow right here goes right through, and it says 221. So our true course is 221. So far we have our true course. We have the amount of miles that we're going to travel in nautical miles. Our cruise speed is averaged out to be 100 true airspeed. And altitude is at 4,500, again, to get over the sound and to give us any clearance clouds be around like 6,000 or so. So we're looking pretty good. The next thing that we got to do is this variation. Variation is your magnetic variation. On your sectional, we might have to spread this out a little bit more, but you'll see these dotted magenta lines right here. This one says 14 degrees west, and then there's another one right over here. Let me just open this up. Sorry. There's another one over here, right over Nantucket, and that's 15 degrees west. That's to show you the magnetic variation in true north, basically. And we need to calculate that because it will give us our magnetic course. So that we're going to take it from a true course, which is set up for where true north actually is, and we're going to make it magnetic course because the magnetic pull of the Earth is actually in a different place for north, and that's why you have these lines. So Block Island and Plymouth are right about there. So we're about 14 and a half. We can round that up and just do 15. We don't have to be perfect on this as long as we're not off by too much. So I'm still going to do 15 degrees west for variation. If you look at our flight log, it says plus is west because we're going to add that number of degrees to our true course. So plus 15, because it's in between 14 degrees west, 15 degrees west for our variation, magnetic variation. And when we add that, it will give us our magnetic course. So 221 plus 15 equals 236. So far we're going to head for 236, seeing that the direction, the DG is set to magnetic compass, which is magnetic course. We still have to do wind correction angle. That's what WCA means. And we're going to have to use our flight computer to do that. So we're going to shift to that next. For figuring out wind correction angle, we're going to have to find what we call the winds aloft forecast. And usually you can find this on the internet. So you will have to have some type of electronic device for winds aloft. You could also call in and ask the briefer for winds aloft forecast along your route. They're only good for a certain number of time. Where you want to go is, I usually just search right up. I search winds, aloft, forecast. The government has a website, and it's right here, winds temps data, and that's on the Aviation Weather Center. Again, that's at aviationweather.gov. We click on that, it goes right to it, and you'll see a map right here for winds and temps data. So we're going to click where we are in the country. We're going to go from Plymouth to Block Island. So we're in the Northeast. I'm going to click on the Northeast, and you'll see that it gives you all this data. There are videos just on how to read this, but again, I'm going to try to make this video a little shorter. We're going to use Boston winds. The other thing that you want to check for too is you want to check for when it is supposed to be used. Again, I'm not too concerned about that because I'm not flying tomorrow, but you can change it for the time which you would be taking off. I would have been taking off around 9:30 tomorrow, and that's Eastern Standard Time. So you add +5 to that, which means that you're going to be around 1400. So if I was to do the winds for the flight tomorrow, if I was going, I push 12 Zulu to 00 Zulu. And again, the winds are going to change now. Boston, see, they changed already, so that's why we use a pencil. Just wanted to show you why we use a pencil. I use Boston winds, make it nice and easy. At 3,000 feet, here's 3,000. It says 27, we add a 0 to the end of that. 270, so the winds are coming from the west at 38 knots. And at 6,000 feet, they're at 280 at 44 knots. So again, seeing I'm in 4,500 for an altitude, I'm going to average those together. So 270 plus 280 is 15. 550, divide that by 2, you got 275, which makes sense because you just averaged 280 and 270, it's 275. So the wind direction is going to be at 275 for 4,500, and then 38 plus 44, again, doing this totally manually, don't need a calculator, but it would probably be faster with a calculator. It's 82, divide that by 2 to get an average, that's 41 knots. So our winds aloft for 4,500, as read by the wind temps data, is 275 at 41 knots. We're going to need that for our E6B flight computer, which is the next step to figure out our wind correction angle. And we're going to use this side right here. So we're going to start on this side because we're going to get our true heading and ground speed. Okay, we're going to get our wind correction angle out of this too. If you're doing the test, you're going to need to know how to do this, but the directions are right here. So you have to trust in the directions. And the first step says set wind direction under true index. So we're going to go to our winds aloft, and the direction is 275. So we're going to turn this wheel right here to the true index on top until it says 275. All right, step 2 is to mark the wind velocity up from the center point. There's a center point. I don't know if you could see that right there where my pencil's pointing to. And you're going to need a pencil because you have to mark in this wheel. I always like to put it at 100 just so I have a starting place that I'm used to and comfortable with. And it says mark the wind velocity up from the center point. So we're going to stay on the center line right here. The wind speed is 41. So I'm going to add 41 to 100. So it's going to be at 41, which is right about here. And I'm going to make a pencil mark right at 41 knots. Right in the center. You got to make sure it's right in the center so that way you can read it. And I know it's going to be very hard to see, but it's there. It's right at 41 knots up from 100. Again, adding plus 100 makes it easier, so I have to start with my center dot right on 100. Third step is set true course under true index. That's why we found out the true course from our plotter first. So we're going to turn the true index to 221. So that's our true course. True index, which is right there, to 221. There we go. And we notice that the dot moved, which is a good thing to see. The fourth step is to slide the wind velocity mark, that's the mark you just made, to the true airspeed. And again, our true airspeed is 100, and we found that from the POH. If it's different, you just move it to there. So I'm going to slide this mark down to the 100 line right here. Right on that 100 line. And then the sixth direction is to the wind correction angle reads between the center line and the wind velocity mark. What they mean is between the center and here, you have to count over for the amount of degrees. I don't know if you can see this either, but we're on the right side. So we're on the plus side because plus is in blue. And on the left, this would be minus degree side because it's in red. So we're on plus. Our wind correction angle is going to be a positive to the right wind correction angle, and we're going to count these little lines in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It looks like it's almost on the 18, so we'll round up to 18, and that's plus 18 degrees, because that will get us correction on our magnetic course to correct for any wind that is pushing us along our route. The last thing is, while that's still lined up there, this center dot is your ground speed. So that's how fast you're traveling over the ground. Ground speed and airspeed are two different things. Ground speed is ultimately how fast you're moving over the ground. Seeing that you're moving over the ground, that's what you base your flight time on. So right here, it's right below 70. It's about almost 69. So we're going to round it up to 69 for ground speed, and there's a place for ground speed right here. Again, that's how fast you're going over the ground. And then finally, we're going to take our magnetic course and add 18 degrees for wind correction angle, and that will give us the magnetic heading, or the heading that we're actually going to put the plane towards to correct for wind and magnetic variation. So that would be 236 plus 18 is 246, let's see, 254. And that's ultimately a lot of the flight log right here. I only have one leg. I'm going a straight shot from Plymouth to Block Island. So far we're there right now. So on the other side of this E6B is the flight computer on this side, which we're going to need to use to find our total time of flight. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a climb up to 4,500 feet. I round that again, but again, if you look in the POH, like I said, it'll have the climbing rates and this and that in it. I am just going to estimate, again, for time's sake, and also just what I do in general. I estimate for 1,000 feet per minute. So if I'm at 4,500, I'm going to say it's going to take 5 minutes for top of climb. Again, you want to be somewhat in the ballpark. It usually doesn't take 5 minutes to get to 4,500, but I just add that on, because you'll see why when we do the flight plan in a second. It gives me a little bit more time to get up there. So what we need to do with the flight computer right here is, you see this rate thing right here? It says rate. That's our general triangle that we're going to use to calculate things, okay? To calculate how long it's going to take us, remember we already did top of climb, which is the climbing time that it would take to 4,500 feet. We're going to have to calculate the rest of the time it takes us to get there. So to find out the total time to go to 59 miles, we're going to point this arrow, the rate arrow, to 69, which is our ground speed. And that's right there, right underneath 70, you got 69 right there. Then we're going to take our total miles, 59, and we're going to find that on the outside here. So 59 miles is right here, right below 60. And I read right into here, and it's going to take us 51, 52 minutes to get there. And I read that because we have 59 right here. Here's 51, and it's just about a half, so I'm going to round up just to be safe. 52 minutes to get there. 5 minutes to climb, 52 to fly, equals 57 minutes total to go from Plymouth to Block Island with all this data, with the winds against us, with magnetic variation, and a wind correction angle to keep us on course. We're going to fly 254 for 57 minutes, and we should get to Block Island in 57 minutes. The last thing that we have right here in our flight log is the fuel required. First thing you have to know, I was going to fly this during the day, so there are rules to flying VFR. If it's a day flight, you have to add 30 minutes of fuel to your required fuel. That is so that you can get, hopefully, safely to an airport if you have to deviate at all. In the POH, it also shows you that when you run up or test the engine of the C-152, that it takes about 0.8 gallons of fuel. So we're going to add 0.8 to our fuel required, along with 30 minutes of fuel. Now, where would you find the data for the fuel rate used? Well, again, you go to the POH, and it all depends on your RPM settings. I, again, will estimate for saving time, and also just what I do in real life. I round up, by the way, so that way I definitely have enough fuel. It's better to have more than have less. So I average it out for about 6 gallons per hour. Take 6 gallons per hour for the 152 to fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this side of the E6B again. We set the rate to 60, which is 6.0 at this point. So these numbers can stand for different things. That's 6 gallons of fuel per hour. Okay, and you're going to travel 59 miles. So we're going to go on the outside here again. We're going to go to 59. And on the inside, it will show me how many gallons of fuel we have. We have 55 or 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8. It will take me 5.9 gallons of fuel to get there. So we've got 5.9 so far. And that's one way. That's from Plymouth to Block Island. We're going to add 30 minutes of fuel. So we're going to leave it at a rate of 6. We're going to go to 30 for 30 minutes. And again, that's going to be 3.0 gallons because it's pointing to 30, which is 3.0 gallons. So we're going to add 3 gallons. And then finally, we have to add the 0.8 for running up to test the engine. We add that all together. That's 8.9 plus 0.8 is 9.7 gallons. That's how many gallons it's going to take to get to Block Island. Because again, we're going to add the 30 minutes of extra fuel that they require, the FAA requires, and just the rules in general require for daytime VFR. And 0.8, I found that in the POH. It says add 0.8 gallons for the 152. It could be different for any other plane. You need the POH to find that data. Now, really just a quick aside. If you're flying at night, this is daytime rules. Nighttime, which is 1 hour after civil twilight, you need 45 minutes of fuel. So if you're doing this during the night, you'd have to go to 45. It's 6 gallons per hour. It's 4.5 gallons instead of just 3. Nighttime, they require you to have more extra fuel in there. So 9.7 gallons altogether. Overall, that's how you fill out the flight log for the top here. Magnetic heading is what you're going to steer the plane for, and that's from Plymouth. So a lot of pilots will overfly the airport 1,000 feet over the flight pattern for non-jet aircraft, and that way you have the heading going right from Plymouth and you're right on track for Block Island. So again, they overfly, they make sure they're leaving at a 254 radial from the airport, and they go. In the real world, most of us just take off, generally head towards that direction and line up. And in order to estimate, we're going to use checkpoints along our route. So we're going to have to look at that section once again and make some good checkpoints for our flights to make sure that we remain on course with our magnetic heading. All right, now we're going to use the electronic E6B. We got done with planning the whole thing with the manual E6B flight computer, if you will. This is the one that I like to use. I like to use the Sporties one, and we're just going to turn it on. Now, you will need to learn the functions on this, okay? So we're just going to see if it equals these things or around what I calculated with the manual one. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out our magnetic heading, okay? To do that on the Sporties E6B, we're going to hit this heading ground speed button. It has 2 settings, heading ground speed and this other one that we don't need. So I'm going to have heading ground speed. I'm going to enter on that. The wind direction is the winds aloft forecast. It's 275. Enter. The wind speed is 41 knots. Enter. The course is the true course. That's 221. Push enter. My true airspeed, again, I averaged to be 100, so I'm leaving it at 100. And it does all the calculations for me. This says GS on it, which is ground speed. That's 70.2. We calculate it to be about 69, so that's not far off at all. That's fine. And the heading for the magnetic course is 240 with a wind correction angle of 19. Again, it's not going to be perfect because basically we're using a estimate on the manual one. But 240 is not totally off the magnetic course here, but you're going to add 19 to that. So it would have a heading of 259 or so. Good, not that much. Again, you're going to double check with the checkpoints, but that's how we use this and how we get that in there. If you notice, this was a lot faster to calculate everything. That's why I use it in the real world. But if the batteries die or whatever, I have my manual to double check with that. So I enter all this stuff in, and I'm going to compare it to my flight log that I made. Now, what you have to understand is this 240 is not relevant to us because we did our variation by looking at the sectional. So my magnetic course is 236. What I'm really looking for on this is the wind correction angle, and that's of 19. So we were close. It said I said 18 when I did it manually with the manual E6B. It'd be 19, so I'm going to add 236 plus 19 would be 255. So we'd be off by 1 degree, which isn't much at all. Again, the ground speed is off by 1 according to this too. This one says 70.2. This says 69. So again, not bad at all. Now I'm going to make sure our total time is right. So again, you have to use the E6B from Sporties. You have to know how to use it. What we're going to do is we're going to go to flight, and we're going to go to leg time. That will calculate a leg of flight. You can see that I have 59 for the distance already in there, but I can type 59. It's 59 nautical miles. Ground speed, it keeps the ground speed that I calculated already from the beginning, so again, it saves time. But I'm going to enter 69, because that's what I calculated with the manual E6B. And I'll give you the time of flight, which says 51 minutes and 18 seconds. We said 52, not far off at all. We add 5 to the top of climb, so I estimated it would take us 5 minutes to climb to 4,500, which gives us a total flight time of 57. So you can see that this electronic one saves lots of time again, and it gives you generally the same thing. It also can be used as a general calculator. So if I want to calculate fuel, I can go to required. It says fuel, and it saves everything that you did before, except that we're going to change that to 57 minutes. It said 51 minutes. So I'm going to enter 0, 57 minutes. I'm going to push enter. I calculate again, average 6 gallons of fuel per hour. I average that up, so that way I definitely have enough fuel. And it says it's going to need 5.7 gallons of fuel. I said 5.9 on the manual one, because I think I just did that wrong. I think I did 59 instead of 57. So I already corrected myself here. 5.7 gallons plus 3 is 8.7 plus 8 is 9.5. So I only need 9.5 gallons to be legal within the extra 30 minutes of fuel during the day and the 0.8 for the run-up to test the engine. It's 9.5 gallons. So that's how you use the electronic version. Again, it's a lot faster. I think it's not easier because you have to learn where to get these functions, and it comes with a manual to teach you all that. And yeah, it also has a backlight on it too, which is nice with the Sporty. So if you're using this at night and you're playing, not using it on the flight unless you really need to, then this is useful for calculating things. Now we have to make some checkpoints. Again, we make checkpoints to make sure that we are on course visually. We're going to have to use our plotter again, by the way, and we're going to line it up right on that line that we made earlier for a straight shot to Block Island. You want to line it up right in the middle too, so that you have the nautical miles. We'll make sure Block Island's at 59, so we make sure we're really good. And what we're going to do is we're going to plan some checkpoints about, they say 10 nautical miles during the flight. So if we have 10 nautical miles here, because again, you can read it on the ruler, there's a nice visual right here. This is Assawampset Pond, and again, you will get used to this stuff. So I'm going to write Assawampset Pond, which I'll see. It's a huge lake right here in what we call Lakeville, Mass. I'm going to write that as my first checkpoint, Assawampset Pond. You cannot miss that if you're flying out of Plymouth. In fact, oftentimes if I'm flying to New Bedford, it's a straight shot to the pond and then right down. So it's an awesome big visual. You want to pick big things along the route that you can see. Okay, so again, I'm going to line it up here. Make sure it says 59. And then we do have New Bedford right here. So New Bedford Airport is going to be my next one. New Bedford Regional, KEWB, Kilo, Echo, Whiskey, Bravo. That's giving me my second checkpoint along the way to make sure I'm good. Now it gets a little hairy over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate when I will hit the coastline right here on the sectional. So I'll call it coastline across from Newport. So that way it's across from Newport. So you say coastline across from Newport, which is a nice place, by the way. If you ever go to Rhode Island, Newport's a nice place to visit during the summer. Again, we're making sure it lines up perfectly. Now the next checkpoint, we have a problem. The next checkpoint, we're not going to see much here. So what we're going to do is we're going to estimate when we're going to reach Block Island, because you're going to go right over Rhode Island Sound after that. So we're just going to say Block Island. That will be our 4th checkpoint. And that's going to be more than 10 nautical miles. But that's okay, because that's the best we're going to do. Could you do other things? Sure. You can dial in some VORs and say, okay, between this VOR and that VOR, it's going to be right about here at that time. But just for simplicity's sake, for showing how we flight plan, we're going to leave it right there. All right. Our next step is to line up the plotter once again, making sure it's accurate. And we're going to do point-to-point distance. So from Plymouth to Assawamsett Pond, we're going to have to figure out what it is. And it's about 10 nautical miles. We're going to keep the ruler right there. I'm going to say it takes 10 nautical miles to go from Plymouth to Assawamsett Pond. And again, I'm looking at my sectional mileage right here. It says 10. We're going to leave that right there. If we have New Bedford, it says 17 nautical miles from Plymouth to New Bedford. But remember, we already went 10 nautical miles. So we're going to take 17 minus 10. It's going to be 7 nautical miles from Assawamsett Pond to New Bedford. Finally, we're going to make sure the ruler's in the same place. And the coastline, where I made that mark right here, it says 33 nautical miles. So far, we've gone 7 nautical miles from there to there, but we're going to judge it from New Bedford to the coastline. So New Bedford, again, was at 17 nautical miles. This is at 33 nautical miles to the coast. So 33 minus 17 is, again, doing it longhand, because you don't need a calculator to do this. It takes longer to do it this way, but it's going to be 60 nautical miles from New Bedford Airport to the coastline across from Newport. Finally, we're going to calculate how long it would take, again, to go to Block Island. It's a total of 59 nautical miles, so it should be at 59 nautical miles on the plotter. So 59 minus all these miles here, 17, that's 33. 59 minus 33 is 26. So it's got to be 26 nautical miles to Block Island. And this should equal 59 miles. So you just want to double check that. And that definitely does equal 59 nautical miles, so that we know that we're good and that the checkpoints are in the right place. So we know it's 59 nautical miles. This says distance remaining. That's just to keep track of how many more nautical miles you have to go. That's in case you get a little lost. You'll know how long it should be to the ultimate destination. So we're going to take our total miles here, which is 59 nautical miles, and minus 10, which means that there should be 49 miles remaining. 49 minus 7, there should be 42 from New Bedford to Block Island. 42 minus 16 is 26, which makes sense because we have 26 there. They're finally going to fly those final 26 nautical miles, and there's no more distance, obviously. The next thing I have to do is we're going to calculate the elapsed time here, and that's why we had to calculate our ground speed. So we're going to take our E6B flight computer right here. We're going to take our rate arrow, and we're going to put it to the ground speed that we had, which was 69 knots. So right below 70, 69. And we have to go with the amount of distance that we're going to travel, which is 10 nautical miles. So we're going to find 10 nautical miles on the outside here. 10's right there. And then these turn into minutes right here. These are hours, so we're going to go with minutes. It's not going to take us that long. So this is 8 minutes and 9 minutes. Here's 8.5. So it's a little bit more than 8.5 minutes. So we're going to round that up to 9 minutes. Okay, plus we have to add in the top of climb time, which is 5. So it should take us 14 minutes when we get to Assawamsett Pond. We have to add in the time of climb because you can climb up to that altitude, then overfly Plymouth and be on track to do that. All right, New Bedford's the next one. It's 7 nautical miles, and we're still traveling at 69 knots, ground speed that is. That's speed over the ground. So I'm going to go to 7, which is 70, which is 7.0, and it's a little bit above 6 minutes. So not quite 6.5, so I'm going to round down to 6 minutes. And I'm going to add in that extra time. So I'm going to put a slash here. I'm going to put 6 plus 14 is 20. This is the amount of time total it should take you to get to New Bedford. And this is how much it should take you on that one leg of 7 nautical miles. It's good to keep the total time there, so that way you know that if you took off, you should be around New Bedford in 20 minutes after you took off. And that should only take you 6 minutes between Assawamsett and New Bedford to get there. All right, we got 60 nautical miles to get to the coastline here, right across from Newport. So again, we keep it at 69 knots ground speed, and we got to find 16 on here, which is right here. And if you notice, it's right near 14, which means 14 minutes. So I'm going to put 14 minutes to get from New Bedford to the coastline. Put a slash. We're going to add 14 to 20. That's 34. So in 34 minutes of flight, we should make it to the coastline. It should take 14 minutes from New Bedford to the coastline. And then finally, we have our final calculation. It should equal right around 57 minutes. It could be 56. It could be 58. It shouldn't be off that much. That's because we average things right here. So 26 nautical miles. We're at 69 knots ground speed. And again, 26. Go to 26 on the outside. Here's 25. The next big slash rate is 26. And it's right below 23. So if we add 23 minutes, that's how long it's going to take us from the coastline to Block Island. We're going to add 34 plus 23 is 57, which is what we calculated for total time. So it should take 23 minutes to go from the coastline to Block Island, and we should have a total flight time of 57 minutes. That is why we have an E6B flight computer, and that is how we use it for general VFR flight planning. So what do all these times mean? Well, these times mean that when you set a stopwatch as you start your flight, it will give you a really good indicator if you're on time and on course. I use a Garmin Pilot Watch for this. And what I do is I go to the setting of fly, and it has a nice little stopwatch right there. This automatically starts going when you take off, which is nice to do. But I always hit start right here, and that will stop the timer going on with the flight. And so when I reach Assawamsett Pond, I should see around 14 minutes here. Let's say it wasn't 14, because honestly, if I'm going to do a straight shot and not climb to 4,500 before I cross over Plymouth, which is what I do a lot to save time because I'm renting and time is what they charge me on. Let's say I get there in 10 minutes, which is what I have this actual column for. Well, that means that it took me 4 less minutes. What I will do is I'll take the total time here after the slash, and I'll minus 4 on every single one. So now it should only take me 53 minutes to get to Block Island. I should get to New Bedford in 16 according to the watch, because I calibrated it to the time that I got to Assawamsett. And I should also get to the coastline now in 30 minutes. So you definitely want some type of stopwatch when you're flying. That's why some yokes will have a stopwatch right on there. You don't need one of these fancy pilot watches, but you want some type of thing. Heck, you can even just write down your starting time on your watch or clock, and then you just add the minutes to it, and you make sure that you're over that checkpoint at that time. So let's say it was like 12 o'clock noon. You want to make sure that you're over Assawamsett at 12:14. If it's sooner than that, write down the time you got there and minus that time from all the max times that you should be at the other checkpoints. So this might change over time. Winds aloft is a forecast. It's not definite. So you might go faster or slower. It's just an estimate. So that's why you have this actual column. So I hope that I showed you how to use that. And now we're going to go to the remarks column. I almost never use this arrival time because I actually do all my calculations here. Again, this is just in case if you're arriving and you're estimating different arrivals. It's the same thing I did right here. I just usually do in this column, so I'm just used to doing it. Now we have this remarks column. This is for all your radio frequencies and stuff. To find out all the radio frequencies that you're going to use along your route, as a flight simmer, before I did all this private pilot training and everything, I had no clue where they got all these frequencies from. You know, you have your nice little Microsoft Flight Simmer, you have the tilde button, and then you just kind of like, you know, have it right there and it does everything for you. But to find all the radio frequencies, it's in the chart supplement in the Northeast. And you could also find some frequencies right on the sectional. For example, let's look at Plymouth right here, which is right here. It says that they have ASOS, which is weather, at 135.625. And see this 123.0 with the C on it? That's the Common Traffic Advisory frequency. That's what we use because Plymouth does not have a control tower. So we use that to communicate our intentions, like where we are in the pattern, where we're departing from, and that way anyone flying into Plymouth should be on that frequency and they'll know exactly where you are to avoid you. So we're going to write that into the remarks column. If you want to use the supplement guide to find that. What you're going to do is at the top of each page, they have the states of the airports. So Plymouth is in Massachusetts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get to Massachusetts. Okay. Once I'm in the Massachusetts here, it goes in alphabetical order. I'm going to look for Plymouth. I'm in the ends. So I'm going to keep turning. I'm at Provincetown, Pittsfield. Here's Plymouth. Plymouth Municipal. And if you look through all this information, it tells you a lot. It's 4 miles southwest of the closest major city. So 4 miles southwest of Plymouth. Here's the Zulu time. You're -5 and only -4 if it's daylight savings time. Right now, we are not in daylight savings time, so we're -5. Tells you the GPS coordinates of the airport. Tells you the field elevation, which is 148 above sea level. So that's 148 MSL. And then NOTAM file is under PYM. So if it has any NOTAMs, it'll be under PYM. It also tells you the runways, how long they are, what they're made out of, and things to look out for on those runways. Like, for example, on runway 6, we have some trees out there. For runway 24, we have some trees. It tells you about the PAPI that they have there to help you with the glide scope. Again, runway 1533, what it's made out of, all this stuff. It also tells you about services at the airport. They have fuel. They have Jet A and 100 low lead fuel. They tell you how to activate the lights of the runway at night. You have to activate the runway lights. I'm just looking at this really quick, but the frequency is 122.9. So unlike the simulator, we have to activate lights at a lot of airports. They don't just stay on 24/7. And what you would do is you'd set the comm radio to 122.9, and then you'd push the talk button. I think it's 7 times to make it the brightest. It goes in various different brightnesses going to how many times you click it. But you click it till you see what you want, and then you stop clicking. Airport remarks, they tell you when it's attended, no touch and go landings. So this is special things. And they say there's wildlife on and in view of the airport. There's a lot of deer out there and stuff. It's around the woods. Departing aircraft encouraged to fly the local noise abatement procedures. You'd have to contact the airport to see what those are. Out here, only because I've flown there so much, you have to go out to the power lines before you make any type of thing, and that's because there's people living right here on the airport. So that's what they mean by noise abatement procedures. Airport manager's number is here in case you have to call and find out anything if you're not used to the airport. Weather data is the airport weather. So we're going to write this down right here. This is where we start getting to those radio frequencies that we need. I'm going to say Kilo Papa Yankee Mike so that we know it's Plymouth. ASOS, so we know what the weather service is, and it's on 135.625. We're going to write all these frequencies down so that way when we're in the airplane, we know what to set the radios to get weather. We also can see that it says Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, the CTAF, or the Unicom is at 123.0. We definitely want to know that because that's how we contact other pilots around the Plymouth area to let them know what we're doing and where we are. Because again, it does not have a control tower. And then finally, you also want approach. And we use Boston approach between the hours of 1100 and 0400 Zulu. That's from May 15th to September 30th. And between 1100 to 0300 Zulu, October 1st to May 14th, we also use Boston approach. And the frequency is right here, 118.2. If I was going during the day, I would use that. And right now it's December, so this is the frequency I would use. So I'm going to write right below here, Boston approach on 118.2. You might see that in the Microsoft Flight Simulator. They never updated that. That's why as a real-world pilot, you want to look in your chart supplement. But they call it Cape Approach. That's what it used to be. And then they consolidated it to Boston Approach. Now, let's say that you are flying at different times. They give you more data on where to contact them. So at different hours, you want to contact Boston Center Approach at 128.75. Now, as a VFR pilot, do I have to contact them? No. Why would I want to contact Approach? Again, another good question that I didn't understand before I did private pilot training. They will give you flight tracking. In other words, they will make sure that you are aware of any traffic around you. They'll say, hey, there's traffic at 9 o'clock. So that way you can get a visual reference for any traffic. Really, really good to have, especially if you're doing cross country, anything 50 miles or over. You don't even have to have a flight plan for them to track you. For example, I did some sightseeing right outside Class C airspace in Providence. So I contacted Providence Approach and I said, hey, I need some flight tracking so that way you can just keep me away from any traffic that's in the area while I'm trying to take pictures of my house. That's what I was doing. So that's what Approach is there for. They track your flights. Always a great thing, especially on cross countries, 50 nautical miles and over. The other thing that you're going to want to do also, if you're flying in real life, and again, this is more for the flight sim community because they were asking me how you plan flights. So you're going to look for the FSS, the Flight Service Station. What that is it's a radio frequency in the air that can help you with weather reports. But what we use it for is we activate filed flight plans with flight service. Do you have to do it from the air? No, you don't have to do it from the air. But could you do it from the air? Sure. As soon as I take off and I get everything ready and I'm flying over Plymouth, let's say I didn't activate my flight plan yet because I want to make sure that I got myself on course and everything. I would contact flight services. So what we want to do to find our flight service station is we're going to look for the closest RCO. And here's Mansfield RCO. It's called Bridgeport Radio. These are actually connected to a flight service center. And it gives us the frequency right here. That's right outside Plymouth. We just have to find one that's close. It says on 122.5. So I'm going to put Bridgeport Radio. And that's on 122.5. If I need to file a PIREP on weather that I see on course, or if I want to find out about other PIREPs of winds aloft, anything going on up there, AirMets, SIGMETs, en route, that's who I'm going to contact. And that would typically actually go before Boston Approach, because if I'm going to activate my flight plan, which I would write activate flight plan, I'd call up Bridgeport Radio and say, Bridgeport Radio, November 489090 with you on 122.5. Then they know where I'm broadcasting on, and then they'd come back and I'd say, Cessna 990 wishes to activate the flight plan from Kilo Papa Yankee Mike to Kilo Bravo India Delta at this time. They'd say it's activated and that, to continue on my route. And that way I know that they're counting from the moment I said activate it to when I get there. This is very important for safety because if you're late at the airport by 30 minutes, they're going to start calling around searching for you at the airports. So that's why we do flight plans as VFR pilots, is to remain safe and to stay on track and to also have some backup on safety. Worst case scenario, they're going to send out Civil Air Patrol and other pilots to start looking for you if they can't find you from calling. So awesome to have that. Let's say you go down, they're going to be looking for you, and if you follow the flight plan, they're going to know what route you were going, so that's where they're going to search. After you activate your flight plan, if you're doing it in the air, then you're going to go over to Boston Approach, and you're going to contact them to follow you. They'll already know where you're going. They'll ask if they have to. They'll say where you're en route to, and you'll say en route to Block Island or Kilo Bravo India Delta, and they'll know exactly where you're going. And they'll hand you off to different approaches on your route there. They'll tell you what frequencies to use. So we're just going to keep Boston Approach, and then it'll change us to what we need. That's all the frequencies we need at the beginning of our flight. We're just going to keep changing to approaches as we need as we fly to Block Island. Okay, they're definitely going to make you go to Providence Approach. Again, your sectional, you want to have it on you. You fold it. And also, if you're flying in a plane, you're going to orient it to the way you're heading. That's a good thing to do. So that way, when you're flying ahead, you'll know exactly that New Bedford's going to be on your left. Hey, Assawamset's on my right. Hey, the coastline, Newport's on my right. So it orients it to the way that you're traveling. Always have the section going the way that you're traveling. The last thing that we have to do under remarks is we have to get all the frequencies for Block Island. So again, we're going to go to the chart supplement guide. Block Island is part of Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island. That's where I grew up. We're going to look for Rhode Island on the top here. And again, we're looking for Block Island. So we're going to go to the B's. Block Island State, it's right there. Let me just go back one. Nope, so we're good. So it's the first one under Rhode Island in the chart supplement guide. Okay, and again, it gives you all the runway headings. The thing that we're looking for is the weather, and this is not a Towered airport. You can actually tell that in the sectional because Towered airports are blue. So if it's blue, you know you're going to have a control tower. And the radio frequency will say CT, control tower. Blue, it has a control tower and it has radio frequencies for the tower. Block Island is magenta, so it is an uncontrolled airport. And again, you'll see the radio frequencies here or the chart supplement guide. I like to use the chart supplement because those will be more updated than the sectional. And we have to look right below here. It says communication CTAF 123.0. So they actually use the same common traffic advisory frequency as Plymouth, and you will hear that from Plymouth. They'll, you have to say where you are. You say Block Island traffic instead of Plymouth, but we're all on the same radio frequency. So it's really crucial that you know what airport you're going to land at. So again, I'm going to put KBID, CTAF, and again, we're going to contact over 123.0. And that way, any pilots landing at Block Island will be listening to that frequency and can find where we are around the airport. If we're in the traffic pattern, if we're slightly out for 5 nautical miles out, they'll know where to look. So that way we don't have any problems. Over here, it has the AWOS, which is the weather. It says it's on 134.775. So we're going to check that before we get into the pattern to know the winds and what runway heading we're probably going to fly. Last thing is, I also like to write down the final approach that I'm supposed to be in contact with. So let's say that I somehow lose contact with approach. They can't find me. I know what approach I have to contact when I'm around Block Island, and that's Providence approach. So I'm going to put that right below Providence approach, and that's on 125.75. If you follow me on this, you can see the frequencies as you look at the chart supplement. And if all the other times, they give you the times that Providence approach is active. If it's, probably early in the morning, really early in the morning, you're going to contact Boston Center on 124.85. So everything's right here that you need. Again, you want to make yourself familiar with everything. The required things for private pilots to know are everything. All given information on the airport that you're going to go to, the runway links, all that. You have to know those to make sure that you're safe. Important things to look for on the runways, by the way, which I almost forgot, is that you want to make sure that it doesn't say right traffic anywhere in here. If it doesn't say anything, it means it's a standard left traffic pattern. If it said right, you would have to fly a right pattern on that, right traffic pattern. So those are things that you'll find in the chart supplement guide. Again, they update them every now and then. This one was only good till December 5th. And what I do is I use an app for that because I'm going to have electronic flight bag now. But if you're doing it totally old school, if you're doing a check ride, you definitely want one of these. So that way you're not referring to that and trying to go all the way through it. You want a chart supplement guide. And you can actually see that I use this on my check ride because it has this little marker right there for when I did. I pulled out the other ones, but I had a radio class designation for VORs on that. The frequencies do change here and there, but not frequently. So even if you have a slightly old one, it will probably be good enough. And for the simulator, it's definitely going to be good enough because they have a lot of old frequencies here and there if they messed it up because they're just not updated in the simulator. Overall, that is how you plan a VFR flight. Again, you want to have all this information down. You'll have to know how much fuel you have in the plane, so you have to know if you have enough to make it there. And that's all based on the ground speed due to the winds. And it tells you, if you have a nice wind behind you, a tailwind, that isn't going to take you 57 minutes. When I planned this flight out last weekend, it was only going to take me like 41 minutes. So it's all based on wind and direction. Checkpoints you have to have so that way you make sure you're on course. If you're not on course, you know what to look for and where to fly around. The line on the sectional is used to let you know in orientation where you are into checkpoints. And finally, all your radio frequencies are here, so you know what to dial into the radio as you get there. The last thing you want to do, though, is you want to know what you're going to call to close your flight plan, because you can close it from your airplane on the ground. Again, you want to look for your closest flight service station, which would probably be, I'm estimating it, but it looks like it's in the Norwich VOR. I'm probably not doing that. I'm going to be honest with you. What I would do in the real world is I'd call 1-800-WX-BRIEF. I'd get a briefer on the phone, and I'd say, November 48990 is on the ground at Block Island and wish to close the flight plan at this time. You can just call up this number, before you leave and say, I like to activate my flight plan in 5 minutes, and 5 minutes later they activate it, so you'd have 5 minutes to leave the airport, and you'd also close it with that. However, when I was training, I used Bridgeport radio to activate the flight plan in the air. Again, another great thing to get used to. And I would close it down with the closest radio when it is at Block Island, which again would be Norwich, which is contacted through the VOR, which is a whole nother game. You can't do that in the simulator, but in real life you can. Again, call 1-800-WX-BRIEF. Tell them who you are, where you are, and that you want to activate or close your flight plan over the phone before you take off and right after you land when you're done in your part at the apron. And that way they know that you arrived safely. They're not looking for you. They're not going to send anyone out when you're late by 30 minutes. There's not going to be any search and rescue operation because, believe it or not, a lot of pilots forget to close their flight plan at the end, and then they cause a lot of trouble that way. So I hope this helps. I know it's a lot. I know it's rather long-winded, but this is generally how I plan a cross-country flight or any flight that I'm going to take. So again, if you followed this video and you use the flight log that I have below in the description, you'll see that it has all this data put in there. If you follow along and fill it out with me while I do this, with the winds that I've used and everything, you'll definitely be able to find out how we plan in the real world for a cross-country flight, or any flight for that matter of fact. It can be under 50 nautical miles. It doesn't need any specific mileage to do one of these. So, hope this helps.